which sci-fi depiction are we the closest to? I mean, you've all seen sci-fi movies, Blade Runner, Star Trek, and all those other kinds of stuff. Where do you feel, or what event are we the closest to from what you've seen in the movies? Harshit, I'd love to go with you first.
I mean, so I do have a little, like, it could be controversial, but I do have a little controversial take to sci-fi in general. I think it definitely helps bring ideas to the fore, but I think the whole conversation with sci-fi, the real meat of the conversation gets pushed a little bit. I think, like, there's always this notion within sci-fi to think of, this sort of timeline where, let's say, robots are taking over the world, or the whole Ready Player One kind of scenario is being implemented.
I'm going to get to Ready Player One very soon.
Yeah. So, but what I do feel, I think, especially like working as an artist, what is more critical is to engage with how we get there, right? And not like at what point are we going to get there. So to think of, for example, a recent work that I did called Landing Page, which is about this idea of data colonialism and digital colonialism, where it exists in multiple manifestations of virtual reality within Oculus, where you sort of are, you're immersed in a land of poppy plantations, and everything in that land is made up of advertisement videos on which most money was spent on Facebook over the last 2 years. And sort of the whole idea is a spin on thinking of how in today's times there is a certain sense of colonization happening, with companies sort of doing a data grab from people, similar to a land grab, what sort of the early colonizers did like 100 and 150 years ago, right? And I think another version of this work sort of exists as a Decentraland parcel. So I bought a plot of land on Decentraland and sort of recreated this work there to question this whole idea of our natural media is becoming one, our natural environment is becoming one of media. And even like when we talk of, let's say, the metaverse and things like that, and we speak from more utopic visions of decentralization and ownership being distributed, etc. But are we really headed towards that? So I create this land space, which is again completely made up of advertisements, and you walk in and you're just surrounded by this sort of...
Harshit, the tangent you're on right now is a very heavy one, man. Like, this is like a rabbit hole. But like from what my perspective I was coming was like, like the Star Trek Midway. Like I can honestly see like a VR headset in the next 5 years where you could overlay MRI data onto an actual body, and maybe that would help a surgeon navigate better through the human body. So just to like, excite your inner child, like what would you like want to see happen like within the next 5 to 10 years that maybe you've seen on screen?
What I would love for to happen is not convert the metaverse into a space of capitalistic ownership and singular ownership, and have people
it's too late for that. That's happening.
The ability to... I don't think it's too late, very honestly. I think we're at sort of the right time to critically engage with this. And I think if more artists sort of start engaging with these technological discourses, so that it just draws more people into the conversation, right? Like what happened earlier was the shaping of this space without sort of a larger cultural artistic discourse around it. So that would be my dream, but I will still sort of also answer the question in terms of sci-fi fascination. And so, I mean, I studied at the Media Lab, which was all about creating or realizing sci-fi in some sense, right? Yep. So I do also see the potential for spaces like the metaverse and virtual reality spaces to build a deeper sense of empathy and sort of transcend the idea of the physical limitations of the human body, right? So things like... and there is actually like research which was done at the lab and at Microsoft Research, which shows this whole idea of homuncular flexibility, where the idea of like you reconfiguring your body in a way to be able to interact with sort of 4 limbs, for example, or 4 hands, for example, right, and be able to do tasks in a way that sort of require physical augmentation, but in a digital sort of way. And there was a very beautiful project around the idea of gender swap, where in a virtual reality space, you sort of experienced yourself as the other gender. And I think projects like these, or spaces like these, I think are what make me feel really optimistic about the metaverse as a space that allows you to experience things that do not necessarily happen naturally, and that helps you build a certain sense of empathy and a certain sense of connectedness. So yeah, that would be my
totally agree with that.
The metaverse.
Myna, I see you smiling there. I know you have.
Yeah. So just quickly, I was scared for a second because I thought that I'm a huge sci-fi fan, so I see so many parallels. So 𝗪𝗻, I mean, Harshit, what you were talking about, the marine, paraplegic who gets to experience this beautiful space. As a full-limbed person, is able to jump around trees, jump from cliffs. I mean, I think that the Web3 space is so ripe for that, exercising in an environment, while you feel like you're traveling through the streets of Rome. I mean, that's possible already.
I mean, fear of heights in VR is real. Like, I've played a Spider-Man game where my legs started shaking at the top of, a skyscraper. That was real.
Yeah, and then and there are so many, like District 9 in terms of it's another sci-fi film, but talking about surveillance. And I've seen, how surveillance has infiltrated our world. AI has infiltrated our world in so many ways. Early films, Will Smith's film, I don't know if you guys remember. I mean, I could go on and on, but there's so much in sci-fi films that are today reality. I mean, we don't even think twice about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the list goes on and on, but I think surveillance, AI, predictive behavior, all of that is something that we've grown up with and have been fascinated with.
I mean, Star Trek, I remember they used to have those flip tricorders, and then we had the Motorola's flip phones. So that was pretty crazy.
Yes.
Arpit,
I think, go
sorry,
ahead.
Mani. Yeah, you.
No, go ahead. I mean, I was just going to say that 𝗪𝗻 is a classic example because it's not that far back. And everything that 𝗪𝗻, sort of we saw in 𝗪𝗻 for the first time is today a reality in many ways. So, yeah.
Definitely. Arpit, the same thing, man.
So I'm a old school guy, and I'm going to go back to something which is very obvious, but neither Harshit nor Myna went there. Maybe a happier version of Matrix. Yeah, so
we're already in that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. We keep on thinking that when is this sci-fi going to happen, but I think we are already very well deep into Matrix.
It's the frog in the boiling water. We're already there.
It's maybe more physical than digital, but we are already there, right? So maybe easily 60% of life is digital today, right? So physical interactions, they have reduced, which is not, by the way, not a good thing, honestly, maybe, right? So, but I think that sci-fi fantasy is somewhat there already, right? So if you look at, let's say, Web3 native generation, like the kids who are playing Roblox and all of these games today, like they have a very different way of consuming content than us. For example, when we started using internet, we couldn't care less who controls our data. We would even know that there is something called as our data, which is going to be profiled by someone, right? But Web3 natives are very different, right? They are very curious about data privacy, and they're very, very cautious about censorship resistance, which is bringing back to this conversation when I relate it to arts and expression of your thoughts. I think censorship resistance is something which is very critical and very important for these Web3 natives, right? And they have a spirit of decentralization. Like, so you can see that people want to run away from anything which kind of tries to create an unnatural, controlled structure. right? So this is not how it was supposed to be. Maybe this is maybe what
sure, man. I honestly feel this is a nice battle that they have between centralization and decentralization, because 100% of either one of them isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
There needs to be like a fine balance.
Yeah. So maybe what Harshit referred to as capitalism, right? So something, this Web3 generation, they are kind of running away from that in a totally different philosophical direction, and Web3 is going to emerge into something which is much more nuanced and much more creative than what we have today. This is the era of primitives, right? So building blocks are being made, your ID solutions are being made. People are, so essentially what is happening is tech disruption has happened to a certain extent, right? It is going on, right? And then what people are doing, they are using their frameworks which they have created in past. They are looking through those frameworks at this new technology. That is where the limitation is coming, right? So people look at it by creating some peripheral use cases. Okay, we have been doing this physically, let's create a jacket digitally and put it as an NFT, right? These are peripheral use cases, which are a good thing to start with. But real breakthrough is going to happen once somebody breaks into a totally new business model, and then new frameworks are going to be created to actually consume this new type of web that we are creating. So I think that's going to be interesting.